Hello, Neogenians. Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Today we're talking about the real meaning of the resurrection and what it has to do with you. I recently released a video about the crucifixion and resurrection and its deeper meaning, but we're going to go even deeper today and really explore its meaning in terms of what it really has to do with your personal transformation. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's going to be really good. But as always, remember, this is way more than a channel. We are a revolution of the mind, here to make higher consciousness, gnosis, go viral. So make sure you hit like, share, and subscribe to make that fire that they tried to put out 2,000 years ago return and spread across the world. Like Jesus said, I have set fire to the world, and I watch it as it blazes. That's what we're doing right now. We're continuing that fire of knowledge, awakening, and gnosis. So like, share, subscribe. Let's spread this like fire. And if you want to help out even more, you can become a member. You get access to a lot of great stuff like free downloads on inner transformation and alchemy, etc. You also get access to a ton of our members only videos. There's probably over 100 of them now. They're really great. And so you get great stuff and you get to help out the channel. I appreciate it. You can also support by checking out my books. I am a Neogenian, and I've written a 5-part series on the Neogenian system. And if you're looking for a free way to support, I gotcha. All you got to do is follow me on Spotify. It's a great free way to support. So if you have a Spotify account, go follow me. It's completely free to do so. And it helps us spread that fire on a completely new platform and reach an entirely new audience. So links to all those things are in the description of this video. The Spotify and my books and the membership, all that stuff. So I appreciate it. All right, now with that out of the way, let's get into this. So we're going to be focusing on the resurrection. And to understand the resurrection, we need to know a little bit about the crucifixion. So we're talking about the Gnostic view of the truth about what resurrection actually means, okay? Now, there are two major beliefs in Gnosticism. I'm sure that there are more than this, but in general, for the most part, there are two major beliefs coming from two different schools of Gnostic thought. There is the Sethian interpretation and the Valentinian interpretation, okay? So in a nutshell, the Sethian interpretation of resurrection is saying the true light cannot be killed. The Valentinian interpretation of resurrection says the true light awakens within you. So they're emphasizing different things. The Sethians saw the crucifixion as something that's an evil attempt by the archons to kill the light, and they were unsuccessful. And the Valentinians saw it rather as a process of resurrection in terms of reaching a higher state of awakening. So resurrection from them is awakening. For the Sethians, resurrection is the showcasing the eternal aspect of our true selves, the divine light. And in a book called The Second Treatise of the Great Seth, Jesus says, and he laughs, Jesus laughs and says, I did not die in reality, but in appearance, and I was laughing at their ignorance. So Jesus is laughing at the fact that they think they are crucifying him, but they're just crucifying the appearance. Because remember, for Gnostics, there is a difference between Christ and Jesus. Jesus was a man. Christ is a principle of awakening. So when Jesus, the man, looked within, he awakened the Christ in himself and became essentially Jesus Christ. Jesus, the man who became an awakened Christ. But all of us have the Christ principle that we can look within and awaken. So when Christ is saying that he didn't really die just in appearance and he was laughing at their ignorance, he means, well, just the corporeal form died. The body died, not the true self. And in another text called the Apocalypse of Peter, Jesus says, the one that you see, so Peter has a vision, and Peter sees two versions of Jesus. One is Jesus being suffering on the cross, and the other is a Jesus above laughing. And Jesus says, the one that you saw above the cross, happy and laughing, is the living Jesus. He, however, into whose hands and feet they are driving the nails, in his physicality being the substitute. So kind of like the decoy. Christ is what the archons really want, and the body is like the decoy. This happens like quite a few times in Sethianism, where the body is a kind of decoy. So that fools the archons. So Jesus is basically saying, hey, the body is not who I am. The body is not what I am. I am the light. I am the divine principle. You're just trying to kill the body. It's like trying to delete the internet by closing out your browser. It's not going to work. Or trying to kill Netflix by smashing your TV with a hammer. It's not how it works. So, Jesus also says that he laughs at their lack of insight, knowing they were born blind. For this reason, the suffering one must indeed remain, because the body is the substitute. But what was liberated was my incorporeal body. But I am the intellectual spirit filled with the brilliant light. So that's what is essentially happening here, is that Jesus is saying the true me is divine light. This body isn't the true me. But that applies to all of us. We are all this divine light, and our bodies are just the garments that our divine light wears. This is really explicit, where it says that the divine expressed as Barbelo wore Jesus. It says that she wore Jesus. So the body is like clothing, essentially. So it would be kind of like someone trying to kill you by burning all your clothes. Yeah, you're going to be naked, and so you're probably not going to want to go in public, but they didn't kill you. They just inconvenienced you for a while. You're just going to have to order some more clothes and then go out again. Kind of like if someone destroys the body, yeah, you can't walk around the physical world anymore. You just got to wait for the next incarnation. It's kind of what's happening here. So, sorry, I'm just making a note of myself. I liked that analogy and I want to use that somewhere. All right, so that's the idea here. And but the archons, they don't get that. They think that they can kill Christ. And so they crucify Jesus. And a Gnostic text called The Concept of Our Great Power says that Jesus prepared himself to descend even to humiliate them. And then so we have this story. I won't read every single quote. But essentially what happens is that the archons think that they're killing Jesus. And so they crucify him and then drag him down into the underworld and deliver him unto Hades. But it says that Jesus basically knew what they were doing, and he prepared himself to go down and humiliate them. And why are they humiliated? Because Hades tries to reach out and grab Jesus, and he can't do it. He literally can't. It says the ruler of Hades discovered that his flesh was of the kind that cannot be grasped. So he's like basically getting Holy Ghosted. And Hades even says, like, who is this? What is this? His word has abolished the law of the eon. He is of the logos of the power of life. So the eternal principle of life, death cannot touch the eternal light of life. Death is an illusion. The Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirit says that Jesus, who possesses life, came and crucified what is in the law. And then the Concept of Our Great Power says he overcame the command of the archons. They were unable to control him by their work. So Finally, in the second treatise of the Great Seth, Jesus says, the death they imagined that I suffered, they themselves suffered in their mistake and blindness. They nailed the man that they had to their own death because their minds did not recognize me. So Jesus is basically saying, hey, the death that they thought that I suffered, they actually suffered because they're blind. Because basically they believe that the realm of matter belongs to the archons. And it's like you're just crucifying your own thing, basically. Like you're making the material thing suffer, which is what you guys are and are responsible for, essentially. But you don't recognize the real me, the divine light me, and so you're blind. You don't know what you're doing. So that's essentially. There's more to it, of course, but that's essentially what the Sethians are emphasizing here. They see resurrection as the triumph or the humiliation of death. That's what the resurrection represents, is the humiliation of death for the Sethians, which the esoteric meaning of this is that our true selves, our divine self, our divine spirit cannot be killed. It is eternal. The only thing that dies is the material body. Now, it's important that you stay healthy, okay? Don't do anything dangerous. It's important to keep the body healthy and safe. But the point is that in an ultimate way, you aren't your body. And that's what the Sethians were emphasizing in the cross and the resurrection, that the resurrection means the light in you cannot be killed. That's essentially their emphasis on the resurrection. It was the humiliation of death, exposing death as an illusion. Now, the Valentinian view, which I really like, is they see resurrection as not just the eternal light within you, but rather the awakening of the eternal light within you. So if the Sethians and the Valentinians were alive today, the Sethians probably wouldn't want to wear little crosses around their necks because they would see it as the weapon of the archons to assassinate Jesus. Whereas the Valentinians would probably be a lot more comfortable wearing one because to them the cross is symbolic for ultimately resurrection. And so in the Valentinians, resurrection is what happens within you. So basically, for Valentinians, resurrection equals awakening. Okay? Resurrection is awakening. And the Gospel of Philip calls this out directly and says, some say that the Lord died first and then ascended, but they're wrong. He rose first and then he died. So we're saying, hey, he's calling out the mainstream interpretation, the literalist interpretation of Christianity. It's like saying, hey, those who say that Jesus died and then resurrected don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Because what actually happened is that he was resurrected first and then he died. What does that mean? It means that the resurrection means awakening. Jesus looked within, realized he was the Christ, and awoke. And in that moment was resurrected. Then his physical body was crucified and he died physically. But that doesn't just apply to Jesus. It applies to all of us. We can all look within, wake up to Christ consciousness while we're alive. It's not about waiting till after you die to reach heaven in the clouds. It's about resurrecting now to the kingdom of God within you. And the Gospel of Philip basically straight up says that this is not just about Jesus. The Gospel of Philip says, when you say that you will die first and then rise, you are wrong. For if you are not resurrected in life, you will receive nothing when you're dead. Basically saying, hey, if you want to achieve a new level of consciousness, you need to do so while you're alive. You're not automatically going to suddenly achieve higher consciousness after you die and you're not just going to suddenly no clip into heaven. You're going to get nothing, basically. Basically, if you didn't do any work, didn't do any awakening while you're alive, your death's not going to do anything for you. So this is about you, not just Jesus. So the idea here is that the resurrection is awakening. But notice, however, that for something to resurrect implies that something died. So how can we interpret this? Well, it means the death of the old self, so the new you can rise. Think of a snake that sheds its skin, as Nietzsche would put it, or as a phoenix that consumes itself in fire and then is reborn in its own ashes, or a caterpillar that creates a cocoon and then becomes a butterfly. And this idea of the caterpillar and the cocoon and the butterfly, what happens? So in the cocoon, the caterpillar essentially dies. Not literally, like the caterpillar is transformed, but the old self dies, and it grows its wings. It attains its wings. It resurrects as something that ascends. So you can kind of think of that very similar to the crucifixion, being in the tomb for 3 days and then resurrecting, as kind of a metaphor for this entering into a cocoon, transforming, and then rising. That's what we're talking about here. And so the Gospel of Philip said, the Gospel of Truth says this. They nailed Jesus to a tree, and he became the fruit of the Father's knowledge. However, the fruit didn't cause destruction when it was eaten, but those who ate it were given joy in the discovery. He discovered them in himself, and they discovered him in themselves. Okay, so this is super cool. This is directly relating the crucifixion of Jesus as symbolic to the tree of knowledge. Because what happened with the tree of knowledge? In the tree of knowledge, God said that if you eat from it, you will die. But that wasn't true. They ate from it and they gained knowledge. In the secret book of John, Jesus is even the one who gives them the fruit of knowledge. So Adam and Eve, they're unaware, they are ignorant. They eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge and they become aware that they are divine. And this is saying, when they nailed Jesus to the cross, it became a tree bearing the fruit of knowledge. And this fruit didn't cause destruction when it was eaten, but those who ate from knowledge were given joy, and it caused the discovery that he discovered them in himself and they discovered him in themselves, meaning Jesus discovered, Christ discovered those who attained gnosis within him, and those who attained gnosis realized that he was in them. And this is repeated in different Gnostic texts, like the Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus says, when you drink from my mouth, I will become you and you will become me. And this is in the canonical Gospel of John as well, is when Jesus says, I am in the Father and I am in you and you are in me, just as I am in the Father and we're all one with the Father. I'm in you, you're in me. He repeats it quite a lot, but Christians tend to just gloss over that verse, which is a very devastating verse revealing the unity of Christ, God, and humanity as one. But that's essentially what it's saying here, is that it becomes this tree of knowledge that allows you to wake up to the Christ within you. And And it's really cool how explicit this is. You know, this almost seems like a modern idea, but it's not. This was written 1600 years ago. That when you eat from knowledge, you realize the Christ in yourself. You realize the Christ consciousness in yourself, to put it in more modern terms. In the Neo-Genian system, we call this all awareness, which is the awareness of the unity of all things. So there's another book called the Treatise of the Resurrection, or the Treatise on the Resurrection. It says, flee divisions and bondage, and you will experience the resurrection now. You ignore this because of your lack of training. Now, that's a pretty brutal line. It's saying that, hey, within yourself, you're divided and chained up. And if you remove your division and things holding you back, the resurrection will happen. You will experience the resurrection now. But you don't get this because you lack training. You haven't realized it. You haven't done the work that you need to realize the truth in this. So we can understand this in modern terms, in terms of integration, division, fleeing division and bondages as integrating the fractured self, like the mirror self in the Neo-Genian system. We are fractured internally. And so when we heal that division within us, we experience the resurrection now because we achieve a new state of consciousness. Just real quick, let's talk about something like reason and intuition. There are a lot of people who are very rational and see intuition as new age, mystical, mumbo jumbo, and garbage. And there are some people who are highly intuitive, but see reason as cold, dead, mechanical, and like a box that is ultimately unspiritual. But when you heal that division, you heal that split between reason and intuition, now you have the intuition of the divine reality that reason can then examine and put into a coherent pattern, allowing you to reach a true higher state of consciousness. That's what's happening in Neo-Genian terms, when it's like, when you flee from divisions and bondage, you'll achieve the resurrection now, but you're basically like, you don't know, you got to get your shit together. You don't know this because of your training, your lack of training. And then the Treatise on the Resurrection says something very cool. It says, what is the resurrection? It is the continuing revelation of those who have risen. So this is a continuing revelation. It's not a one-time event. So in our interpretation, we can understand this as the idea that you don't just crucify your old self and be born to your new self as like a one-time thing. This is happening constantly, like a snake that is constantly growing and outgrowing its old skin and has to constantly shed it. Nietzsche said the snake that cannot cast its skin must die, and so must the minds that are incapable of changing. They aren't really minds. So this crucifixion and resurrection is not a one-time thing. It's happening constantly. Now, they didn't explicitly say that word for word in any of these texts, but that's what we can glean from them. That's how we can interpret them, because you are constantly dying to old beliefs, old patterns, old habits, and then your new self arises. But guess what? You might adopt new beliefs, patterns, and habits that don't serve you, and then those have to be crucified. So the crucifixion and resurrection is something that happens many times throughout life, throughout not even just a single life, but throughout your incarnations. This will occur. You're constantly growing. And interestingly, in alchemy, they even used an image of Jesus rising from the grave holding the cross as representing the alchemist who achieves inner transformation, where the old self dies and the new resurrects. So the alchemists saw this symbolism in Jesus. So it's very important to understand that when we're talking about the resurrection, so basically the Sethians saw the resurrection as the divine light is eternal, it can't be killed. which is cool. I like it. But I think even more powerful is the Valentinian view of resurrection equals awakening. It's about resurrecting to your new self, to a new state of consciousness, and a higher state of consciousness here and now while you are alive. And I mean, how can you practically do this? Well, you need to do mirror work. If you're familiar with the Neogenian system, just look into what mirror work is. But it's a bit eventually, but in terms of Gnosticism, it's healing the split within you, the reunion of the divided Adam and Eve, symbolized by the marriage of Jesus and Mary. So Adam and Eve represent the divided psyche. Jesus and Mary represent the reunified psyche. So you can think of like Adam and Eve as sort of being like reason and intuition split. And then Mary and Jesus, their marriage, representing something like reason and intuition coming together. I'm simplifying quite a bit, because I don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but that's essentially what it's discussing, and that's essentially what you need to do to resurrect. You need to be able to awaken. You need to heal that split within you. But you have to first crucify your old self. And so that means getting rid of old, faulty, limiting beliefs. And we call this neogenesis in the Neogenian system. But in a more broader sense, what this crucifixion of the old self means is old beliefs and ideas like God created the world, or men shouldn't cry, or women must be submissive, or, just anything that has served you and now holds you back. Like, for example, but the idea is that these things were created by your psyche as a means to protect you as a child. So, for example, let's say that you're growing up as a child and you're in a really bad family situation. Maybe your parents are abusive or something. What did your child mind do? It may have developed the defense mechanism of being a people pleaser. Oh, if I just constantly please my parents as much as possible, as much as I can, even if it's to my own detriment, that will keep me safe from their abuse. And so this idea of I must please everyone gets created in your psyche, but then later when you're an adult, that rule set is still there, but it's not helping you anymore. Now it's blocking you, because now you're probably a people pleaser who lets everyone walk all over you, and who is always giving, but never overextending yourself, becoming a doormat possibly, etc. So that's what that means, is like crucifying the old ideas and beliefs and systems that block you from resurrecting. So that's the crucifixion stage is doing this. The crucifixion stage is the old death of the old, and then the resurrection stage is the birth of the new. So think of ways that you can, replace those old beliefs and habits with something more powerful. So, for example, if you believe that God created the world and you're leaving that belief, to resurrect will include studying, let's say, philosophies, religions, psychology, metaphysics, etc., to begin to resurrect to a new way of seeing existence. Or if you are, I believe that I am a people pleaser, or I believe that I must please everyone, you let that part of you die and you resurrect by taking action towards being more autonomous in terms of saying, you know what? I am going to set boundaries. I'm going to set healthy boundaries. That's the resurrection of the new self, when you let the old idea die. Now, be careful with positive affirmations, because a lot of people just try and use positive affirmations here. Positive affirmations are important, but they shouldn't replace the action. So, for example, if you say, if you believe that you are powerless, but you just tell yourself through positive affirmations, I am powerful, without doing any work, you might be telling yourself that you're powerful, but if you didn't do any work, your unconscious psyche is still going to be following that old rule set and seeing yourself as powerless and divided and a people pleaser or whatever. So positive affirmations can be good, but they must be coupled with action. If not, they just become like a Band-Aid, and it doesn't actually heal the wound. You just like cover it up. You're just dragging a rug over the shit instead of cleaning up the shit. So that's important to understand, because a lot of people get trapped in this idea of, oh, well, I'll just do positive affirmations to replace my old beliefs. That can be an important part, but action is necessary, absolutely necessary. So that's what resurrection means. Resurrection means becoming your new self, stepping out of the tomb into a new self, breaking open the cocoon and gaining your wings, shedding the old skin, being reborn in your old ashes, etc., by consciously creating yourself rather than following a rule set that was instilled in you by a corrupt system. That's what resurrection means. That's how you apply it to your life. And that is how you begin to wake up to a new you, and eventually, when all of us do this, a new world. Because that's always the mission. Transform consciousness, transform the world. Because once you transform consciousness, the world will be transformed. So I hope you enjoyed that, my friends. It's a very important topic. As always, tell me in the comments if you reached it to the end, or you watched this to the end. I always like to see who watches these to the end, or who just clicks off in the first 15 minutes or so. So let me know if you made it to the end. As always, my friends, remember, we are way more than a channel. We are state of mind. We are a transformation. We are a revolution of consciousness, and we are here to make higher consciousness. We're here to make gnosis go viral. The church tried to stamp out this fire for 2,000 years, but here we are igniting it. We are resurrecting that fire right here and right now. And you are part of that. Might seem small, but when you hit like, share, and subscribe, that's another ember, another spark. So please do. If you want to help out even more, you can become a member and get great stuff like members only videos and free downloads on inner transformation and alchemy. You can also check out my books on the Neogenian system. And if you're looking for free ways to support, follow me on Spotify right now, completely free to do, and it helps out a lot. Thank you all very much. And for those who are members, I made a very important announcement today, so make sure you check your inbox or wherever your membership is for that. Very important, very exciting update. And I want to thank you all so much for your support. I appreciate it. Means the world to me. Big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Dallas, Nusalina, Eric, Sol, Tornado, Banshee, Pop Out, Hyper Saiyan, Chris, Arkraziel, Joe Ray, HKA, Namaste, and everyone else down here. Thank you all very much. My name is Morgue, and I am Neogenian. Ad Astra.